I think Star Trek is this kind of perfect alchemy of elements that capture the ethos of the time, you know?
Right, like society is being reflected and what's happening among people is now in this science fiction show.
Right. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's not precisely what I'm trying to say. You know, I mean, it's not just a reflection.
This is Improv in Real Life. I'm Jude Treder-Wolff. I've worked in mental health for 40 years, and in that time, the world has changed completely. Technology has transformed how we communicate, connect, even how we work. But in our relationships, change doesn't happen that fast. That's where improv comes in. Improvisers learn to create together without a plan, and they do that by learning a set of skills. Anyone can learn these skills, and they translate directly to life. In this podcast, we'll explore how improv can help us navigate the speed of life. And together, we'll explore how to face change with creativity, agility, and a sense of play. Strong relationships are built on empathy, on the sense that others get where we are and what we need. But we are all in some kind of struggle at any given time, and it can take some effort to really connect to another person's reality. Improv helps us grow that muscle. We need empathy the most when we're in pain. That said, in a weird way, comedy is one of the best ways to understand it. Improv comedy is really special because it is not planned, but there we are, getting the same thing at the same moment and laughing about it. My guest today is Louis Kornfeld of the improv duo Kornfeld and Andrews and Magnet Theater faculty in New York City, who once described improv comedy as looking at human behavior and dynamics through a fun house mirror. Improv is the most fun way to grow the empathy muscle. I hope you enjoy. This podcast is brought to you by LifeStage. LifeStage provides opportunities for people to gain skills and knowledge for navigating today's uncertain world. The capacity for creativity, connection to new ideas and other people, collaboration, and community building. For more information, visit lifestage.me.
My guest today is the fantastic Louis Kornfeld. He's a teacher at Magnet Theater. He performs every Sunday night in a show called Kornfeld and Andrews with his colleague Rick Andrews in a two-prov improv that will blow your mind. In your classes, it became clear to me how good improv explores human behavior, exploits it for comedy, of course. So it sort of explains human behavior by exploiting the things that are interesting and weird about all of us, but in a way that's very loving and humane. And as a therapist, I became very attuned to that, the weird and wonderful things about being human, rather than, am I doing a good job on stage? Am I being funny? And so I just had to gush a little bit about who you are to me. And now we're going to, everybody, the great Louis Kornfeld, I'm going to let him get a word in.
Oh, what an introduction. Thank you for the gushing. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you, Jude.
So let's talk about the topic that you had suggested for us. You called selfish listening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fascinating idea because so much of improv focuses on listening that is for the other person, you might say, or talk about that a little bit, about the yes and listening and your thoughts about that.
Well, you know, the kind of like three-ish core ideas you'll get at any improv school, more or less, will be yes and listen, and sometimes make the other person look good, or treat your partner like a genius. And those are all true things, and they're all good things, but it's really easy when you're training to get stuck on those things. And I don't know if you've ever read the TJ and Dave book, Improvisation at the Speed of Life by
Sure
Pam
did.
Victor. Yeah. So I love TJ and Dave. You know, to me, they're probably the pinnacle improvisers. And I read that book with great anticipation and had a miserable experience after reading the book. No offense to Pam Victor, who is a wonderful person and a good writer, and dare I say a friend, and certainly no offense to TJ and Dave. But if you boil the book down, the book is like 160 pages of telling you to listen, basically. And it's all true. But the problem I found with it was after I read the book, I then tried really hard to listen, and my shows were a disaster, and improv was a disaster, and I felt miserable. And so the advice to just listen is probably something that if you're a genius like TJ and Dave, it just comes really intuitively. But for the rest of us down here, you know, in the third dimension, just being told to listen is one of those things that is like a little misleading because it doesn't tell you exactly how or what that means. So when you catch yourself taking listening as sort of like a golden path to being a great improviser, you'll oftentimes find yourself in a scene more focused on your own listening than on what you're listening for. It can actually end up being this sort of like weird mirror. I'm listening, but actually all of my awareness is just focused on how good I'm doing listening. And my listening can actually detach me from the other person. It can actually impede my ability to act on my impulses, impede my ability to recognize my impulses. Sometimes, if I make listening the kind of chief priority, I can sort of mistake me having an impulse or me having an opinion or me wanting to cut the other person off or me in some sense actually reacting to what's happening. I mean, I can mistake that as selfishness or bad play, and so I'll suppress it in favor of just listening. And oftentimes that kind of listening takes the form of wide-eyed staring with like a little bit of a smile on your face, but really nothing happening behind the mask. So I sort of spent a lot of time thinking about breaking listening down into what you're listening for, instead of just telling a person to listen, kind of giving them a slightly more specific target to aim for. And more or less, I kind of broke it down into like two broad categories of listening. I sort of think of it as like the yin and yang of listening.
Okay.
But of those two, one of them that seems very important is what I think of as selfish listening. So you're not listening because you're trying to be like altruistic, or you're not listening because it sounds like you're a bad person if you don't listen in a scene. You're listening with a specific purpose, and I would be happy to break that down more specifically for you, but
Yeah.
I fear I'm running the risk of rambling, so I will stop and allow you to
Well,
allow you to talk.
I have two questions, and then I know you have some exercises for us to do, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Well, one is I wondered, so this is how I'm interpreting what you're saying, and I want to know if this is what you mean, but that when you were miserable after reading TD, when you applied this idea, like here's your heroes, and you read this book, and so the idea of listening, because that really is the topic of the day. That's what applied improv world focuses
Hmm.
on a great deal also. And it's because people often don't listen in life. I mean, people are in their head.
Hmm.
People have an agenda of their own that I don't think that's what you're going for. This is why I'm asking the question. That often people have an agenda of let me just get done with you
Yes.
so that I can say what I want to say, which is not
Yeah.
at all what you're going to be talking about. So I just want to differentiate that idea. There's that kind of listening, which is I'm just kind of tolerating this other person going on while I wait for my turn.
Yeah.
And that's not a relationship.
No.
That's not a dynamic.
Right.
It's not fun. And
Right.
people are not impacting each other. And I think
Right.
you're talking about, and I think that when I was a beginning improviser, I know exactly what you mean about being worried about, am I doing this right? So my
Hmm.
thing would be as a perfectionist, like, am I listening correctly? And then you're very worried about yourself. And then that's a different kind of selfish listening, I suppose, but it isn't actually relating.
It's actually a little bit, you talked about like people are not actually listening. They're sort of in their head with an agenda, thinking about what they want to say. This kind of listening that I'm talking about, the kind that kind of muffles your impulses, it's that masquerading as listening. You're still in your head. You're still not connecting. You're still not hearing the other person. You're still not giving yourself over to the dynamic, to the relationship. You're still protecting yourself and guarding yourself and focusing on this kind of impermeable membrane between the two of you. But now you're telling yourself that it's listening. So it has this kind of weird moral attachment to it too, that I'm still doing kind of not great improv and I'm still not connecting with the person, but I'm good. And if I just am more good, then somehow I'll become a better improviser. And it's just not the case. But yeah, what I'm talking about exactly in reality, very often we're not actually listening to each other. Very often we listen up until the point that we disagree, or we listen up until the point that you confirm something that we already think, or we listen with an agenda, and then we kind of tune out and just sort of wait our turn to chime in. What I'm talking about is actually that, but it's making the mechanics of that transparent so that you're playing that rather than being ensnared in that. I think a lot of times in reality, we're sort of ensnared in a cocoon of our own opinions and in a cocoon of our own sort of self-affirmation. And we'll hear just as much as we want to hear in order to reassure ourselves that we're right. And then that's it. I think it's fundamentally the exact same thing as an improviser, because the goal as an improviser is to kind of reveal what's funny about authentic behavior. So shitty listening has to be a part of authentic. I'm sorry, can I curse on this?
Yes.
So thank you. So shitty listening has to be a part of authentic behavior because we're shitty listeners. So we have to be able to reflect that well. But by making the mechanics of that transparent to yourself, you can actually become a really great listener by imitating being a shitty listener. If
So
that makes
let's play
sense.
with that. Yeah, do you have an exercise for that?
Yeah, there's two that I enjoy. One of them you have definitely done because I remember working with a group that you were in and doing it. I'll kind of walk through it. So this is a two-part exercise. This actually doesn't work too well with two people. This works really well with a group, but I can kind of explain how it would go
Okay.
and demonstrate it. So round one, what I would do is I would have let's say I'm in a class with 16 people. I'd have everyone stand in a circle and we'd all take turns initiating a very, very short scene for each other. And the instruction is you're going to initiate by bragging about something. And the rule is, so I would brag to you, and then you as my partner, you can only respond with, "Oh, cool," or "Oh, good for you," or "Oh, really interesting." That's basically it. You get one response as my partner, and it's one of those things. So I brag, you respond with, "Oh, cool." And then my next move is to go deeper into my brag or kind of share my philosophy about my brag or amplify my brag. But I want to go like one step further into like living with my brag. And the rule is it should sound like a real human being brag. It shouldn't be like, this morning I didn't have my face ripped off by a tiger. It shouldn't sound like that because that means
Right.
nothing. And it should be a brag that it kind of makes you feel a little proud of yourself, makes you feel a little good about yourself.
Yeah.
It should put a little smile on your face. So, for example, I might initiate a scene for you where I would say, I recently got off all social media.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, my mental health has never been better. They say they're devices for convenience, but I find that the more my time is made convenient, the more I feel like I have to occupy my time. It drives you really crazy. So that would be it. So that'd be like round one. And then everybody would have a chance to do like you brag. The real game is in round two. So then round two, after everyone's done a brag, then I would have people get up and they're going to initiate a scene. So I would say, Jude, you're going to initiate a scene. And what you're going to initiate is a very serious, heavy moment for your character. Not so serious. This is an important direction. Not so serious that it like really depresses people in the room or like sends people in the room outside to get some air. It can't be that heavy, but like serious enough that we're squarely in the realm of like not a comedy scene. And then, so for example, I might initiate a scene for you where I'm like, my wife told me that she wants a divorce. And then that would be, so we're in a kind of a serious scene. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to initiate a serious scene for me. You initiate a serious scene. My job is to be there for you. I'm your friend. I'm a person who cares. I'm with you. I'm relating with you. But also, I'm the same guy who bragged in the first round of scenes. And I'm looking for any opportunity to slip my brag back into this scene. So I'm relating to you and I'm trying to give you some advice, but I'm just constantly finding ways to tie my advice back to this thing that I already bragged about.
Okay.
So if you initiate like a serious heavy duty scene for me.
Okay. Oh, I don't have enough money for my bills this month. It's it's been pretty, it's been it's tough. Work's just not coming in.
I'm I'm sorry to hear that. That's yeah, this situation economically, it's just I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what we're doing. It's not an economy that's meant to serve people.
It's
It's just
yeah.
awful. I'm sorry to hear that. I wish I had something. Do you need help? I don't have much, but I'd be happy to lend you
No,
a
I
little
just
something.
just to get it off my chest. I'm just stressing about it. I'm just constantly thinking you know, I might go get a job at something like Starbucks or something, and they're laying people off. It's a little much. I haven't this jammed up in a while.
Yeah, it's what can I say? The whole structure, of our culture is it's kind of anti-human in a way, and it's just not conducive for mental health. I should know. I recently got off all social media.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. Never felt clearer. So
That's
what are you gonna do? Like part-time work or?
yeah, I'll take any projects. I'll babysit. what I'm trying to do, people aren't hiring what I'm used to doing. People are cutting back and not doing freelance work, but they're not hiring. So I'll I'll dog sit or cat sit if I have to. One of my friends is cats and dog sitting.
Wow.
I might even do that. I mean, I love cats and dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could help you and, you just point out like things that are out there, but, Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm off all of them. It's been really refreshing actually. So that would be the idea. That would be like running that team. So everyone has a chance to do that, but it is you are genuinely committing to like this serious scene, but it just also has that misdirect where in my mind is just like percolating because I cannot help but want to kind of
Yes.
get a little applause from you.
Yes. So if we could just debrief that for a minute. So what is really, one is hilarious. And when you suddenly find a way to slip in your brag, it's so human. It's so what actually people are always looking for those. I mean, I think that's a real thing. I mean, and sometimes people are genuinely empathetic and also want to say, I'm this multi-level marketing thing I've been involved.
Yes.
So you're talking about this having fun with and doing it's because it's hilarious when you do it. The idea that this human response to someone else is that there is a selfish side to it that you're just making it you're exploiting that for comedy, but also for self-awareness.
Yeah, you can look at it from two sides. From the improv side, the comedy side, there's the idea of like playing your game, finding your game, one of like the big ideas in improv world. And like recently, I've been thinking about the game that you're playing in a scene as boiling down to what is it that you can't let go of? Just really, really simply, your character has something that they just kind of keep on coming back to. They can't let go of this thing. When you can find that for yourself and when it puts a smile on your face, then now the name of the game becomes look for whatever opportunity you can to reassert this thing that you can't let go of. Looking at it from more of a psychological or therapeutic perspective, I think it's just like the basic reality of no matter how empathetic or altruistic we are, we all need acknowledgement. We all have vanity. We have our kind of like Achilles heel when it comes to vanity. We want a certain amount of approval or applause or recognition. We have our little status thing where we need to sort of assert where we are status wise with the other person. We're selfish. There's a kind of well of gravity of selfishness to us that we sort of keep on returning to. And you can look at that from an angle of criticism and judgment. You can look at it from the kind of like spiritual angle of let's learn how to like sand away the selfishness and be pure, clear-minded, enlightened people. I think comedy offers an approach to look at it lovingly by kind of applauding it, by kind of shining a light through it a little bit, where instead of it being something that you're ashamed of or trying to pretend you don't have or putting on the show of being in control of, you sort of recognize that we're all to a certain degree victims of our own incapacity to control our vanity, you know? So I think that learning the technique as an improviser, it just doesn't make you a better person, but again, it makes transparent something that for some people is not at all transparent. And when it's not transparent, they really are the victims of this, where some people are kind of locked in a bit of an inner conflict where they need to tell themselves that they're not the victims of this. So they need to kind of be above themselves. And there's a lot of like inner friction and inner turmoil because they just don't like these parts of themselves that they don't know how to deal with. Improv allows you the capacity to embrace those things in a celebratory manner where we go, hey, that thing that sucks about you, we love. We think it's great.
Exactly. And so may I say that I do a lot of different applied improv with a lot of people who work in mental health, mainly in healthcare. So for example, I just did one that's a flip of this, just to give an idea of, I'm taking what you're saying and just putting it in this applied improv paradigm, that it was all social workers and we did interventions where I may have learned this from you. It may be something I adapted from you. I feel like it was, but 3 people on a team were to influence a 4th person of something they thought that person should do. And one of them was, you think this person should get a makeover. Your 3 friends, you think this person, it's time this person gets a makeover, which could be a very nice thing to do. It could not in a mean girl way, but in a way like you need to clean up your life and your act. And in the scene, even while playing a scene, there were 2 women that couldn't say you need a makeover. They couldn't say it. So they kept going around it and really not listening to the other person. But because of the difficulty of just like what you're teaching everybody in this conversation is, just say the thing. say the thing and you will look like, maybe you'll look like a selfish person or a bad guy. And then go from there and see what that's like to be in that territory of not being so nice,
Right.
of not being so perfect.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. There's like a bit of a, what is it, like a binge and purge kind of quality sometimes to sort of how we deal with those aspects of ourselves that for whatever reason we want to disown. And, there's a bit of like a puritanical way of dealing with that where it's like, oh, I cannot do anything that creates the impression of me being less than a charitable, other focused, listening, open hearted, all the good things that we know are good behaviors. And there's the opposite of that, which I think actually is the sort of like indulgent side of it, of like freedom of expression, man. I can say whatever I want, like that thing, where it's like I can just be deliberately cruel. And both of them, I think, are slightly, both of them have a hard time dealing with, we have a streak of imperfection to us and we do our best with it. And we're monkeys looking up at the angels. You know what I mean? We have the best of intentions and we do our best and we constantly fall in holes and slip on banana peels. And you know what I mean? If you have like an attitude of, I don't know, if you didn't like love that about the situation, I love the fact that no matter how hard I try, that imperfection is always going to reassert itself. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. The fact that I'm trying so hard to be a good person is kind of what identifies me, but I'm trying hard to be a good person and I have needs and I can be mean and I have edges and stuff like that. Again, it's this thing where it's like you don't bisect those parts of yourself and either wholly identify with, no, I'm a good person. I can never say something cruel, or no, you know what? I'm a bad person. You know what I mean? Like, you don't segment those parts. You're able to kind of contain both of them. That's really hard for some people because it feels like there's a lot of punitive threat at the end of it. If I come across as a bad person, it can be really damaging to me. That's another place where I think comedy is such a great space to be in, because ultimately it is, it's like celebrating people for their flaws. That's what it is. Having flaws, it makes you a hero in comedy.
That's the subversive beauty of it, is that it's the struggle to get it right, that we're watching somebody struggle to get it right and not get it right. That's
Yeah.
how we all feel so much more human. It's really all about this rule-bound thinking. There's the rule-bound thinking, I need to come across in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to come across in a certain way for the world to think that I'm okay, or I'm a good professional, or I'm a
Uh-huh.
this. And one of the things I appreciate about improv as a method of examining and exploring and playing with human behavior is that by doing it in that imaginative realm, we're actually working those muscles that then become actually more available out in the real world. We don't even have to plan it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is all in, the first 70 pages of Viola Spolin's book are 100% about this. She's very big on, she called it the approval disapproval syndrome. And she gives a pretty thorough analysis of the way that from early childhood, we're evaluated, graded, codified, measured, and you internalize this thing that I have to orient myself to get approval from those authority figures that I crave approval from and to avoid disapproval.
Yeah.
Or if I go the opposite route where I feel like I'm not getting the love I need, then I embrace the identity of a person who craves disapproval, which becomes this sort of inverted means of basically doing exactly the same thing. I'm getting acknowledgement, but on somebody else's terms. And her entire thing was, there's this part of you, she called it, I think, the X zone or the X factor, I don't know what she called it, but there's this part of you that is not really quantifiable. You don't really know what it is. It's sort of you in your totality. She described it. It comes out when little kids are playing, or it comes out when you're playing baseball or something, when your eye's on the ball and you're just in the flow of the game, and your total organism is responding to its total environment in that moment. And the control of the organism is not coming from this ego-centered personality, which largely comes to trying to fulfill the expectations of people so that you're coded in the positive group and not the negative group. And also, she observed all of that in trying to get kids to act in plays, and she noticed that as soon as they start acting, they're terrible, they're stiff, and they do these awful impersonations of what they think adults want them to see. So the whole genesis of improv was coming up with games to get them out of that, to not say to somebody be spontaneous, but to kind of trick people into these situations where their kind of total organism had to respond in the moment. And all of a sudden you kind of get more of the full person there, rather than the sort of impression of yourself that you're offering the world. And that impression is largely boxed in by this approval disapproval thing. I think in improv, because the roots of long form really kind of early long form wanted to set itself apart artistically from public perception of improv. So a lot of like the early ideology of long form is in these very noble terms of treating each other like poets and geniuses and altruistic listening and support and all that stuff. But because of that, a lot of the terminology that's like the bedrock of improv has this sort of moral overtone to it.
Right.
And so even when you're learning how to improvise, there's this kind of quality that sneaks into the programming where you become afraid that like, oh, if I'm not listening well, that means I'm like a bad person. So I have to listen super hard, or I have to yes and super hard, or I have to treat the other person like a genius super hard. And, realistically doing all those things with a kind of like puritanical quality kind of gets you nowhere in a scene. It just sticks you deeper inside yourself. You're right back into that approval, disapproval thing again. And it becomes hard to like really shine a light into what's funny about human behavior, which starts with an insight into what's funny about your behavior. It's hard to do that when you're trying to put on a show of being a great listener or a great improviser or a great supportive teammate. It's just unhelpful.
It's a very good point about the approval disapproval matrix, or that paradigm of approval disapproval, which I have shared that even with therapy clients, because it is really a fundamental thing in people is, how am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
That's just, how am I doing now? And now, and some people have it more than others. And as you said, and I always think of improv as like skiing, because I hate skiing. I love improv, but I did try to ski because my husband loved skiing, and he wasn't my husband yet. So I wanted to try to
Good
see
for
if I
you.
could ever like it. And I
Yeah.
couldn't afford it, and he paid for it. So I said, okay. And I really tried, and I really hated it. However, in order to stay alive while you're skiing, you cannot think about anything else
Yeah.
except those movements and what's happening on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you get a little bit into it and realize like, oh, my muscles are actually doing this and I can
Mm-hmm.
actually go across the mountain, then the beauty of the mountain opened up for me. And I said, I get why people like this. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I still hated it, but I get why people enjoy this. It's two things at once.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very focused on movements that I'm making so that I can stay alive and manage this activity and not plow into a tree or another person. At the same time, I'm on a mountain in Colorado, and it's stunning, and everywhere I look is beautiful. Those two things were happening at the same time. I did get to that point, and I realized like I will never want to do this again. However, I get why people like it, but it just isn't for me.
Yeah.
It's mostly those boots just and carrying your stuff.
They seem
But
stiff. Yeah.
yeah, they're very stiff. So it's just not for me, too much equipment. But when I really began to, as you had said, about when you're able to let go of what you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to look, those are really strong habits of mine. Those are really strong mental patterns. And I
Sure.
certainly struggled with them. I mean, Catholic school will do that to you, but also just music school did that. But that would be in my personality anyway, I think, even without all of those reinforcements. But when I began to get the idea of, oh, I can let go of that approval, disapproval thing and enter into this moment like skiing. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here and I'm with you. And those two things then can begin to happen where the mechanics of it are happening, but then transcendence is happening.
Yes. I think it's like even beyond like early education or parochialism of, whatever religious denomination encoded you early on. Even just like, I think it's a basic biological thing. You walk into a classroom with 15 other people who you may or may not know. On a biological level, that's enough people for like a small tribe, basically. And you want to survive. You want to be a valued member that, is accepted. And so immediately that anxiety kicks on of, I want to behave in a way that is likable to this group of people. As an improv teacher, I consider my first job is finding ways to short circuit that and trick people into not experiencing that, to lower the bar so drastically and severely that people feel comfortable not needing to impress each other. That's kind of key, number one, because when people are acting out of that desire to impress each other, that's when you get a ton of kind of false starts. You get very inauthentic choices because the choices are directed at the impression I'm making at these people. It's still the neediness of the improviser that's generating these choices. What I'm trying to do is to shift that energy to make it the neediness of the character that's doing the behaving.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's totally true, because when you kind of get out of your own way, I mean, skiing has a little bit more risk involved, but I imagine that there's a little bit more of a transcendent experience along with that too. But it's like you sort of realize what the personality that you comfortably live inside of for day-to-day tasks you kind of lose sight of the fact that that personality excludes a lot of the experience around you. You just don't see everything that's around you because it kind of limits that vision. And when you have, like, if you're, I haven't been skiing, but I'm assuming when you're skiing and it's high risk and you really have to be in your body and really focused, it's not time for the personality to assert its dominance. So it has to kind of drop a little bit. And then you find that along with the concentration that's going into just keeping my body upright, I'm also aware that I'm surrounded by mountains, and this kind of bigger vision comes in as well. It's there, it's just not available to you when you're confined in your everyday prosaic personality. There's something very similar, but with less danger in improv, where when you can find a way out of that suit of armor, where it's not just about what you need, you as an actor need out of these other people. When you shift away from that, and you really get into that improv mindset, and you're kind of able to make yourself a little bit more transparent and able to be the source of the joke a little bit more, you do become aware of a kind of intelligence in the room that you sort of weren't aware of before. It's a super, super interesting thing. But it's this intelligence, just to bring it back to your point about how, like, this applies outside of the classroom too. It's this intelligence that comes out of play. There's a whole different kind of intelligence flowing through you when you're, like, in that state of play with people and feeling playful. Play to this day has this association of being very frivolous, which it is. But just because it's frivolous doesn't mean that there isn't something extremely valuable to it too. Play is an exercise of intelligence that's temporarily not being confined by this kind of suit of armor personality that we wear, that we mistake out of habit as being our total selves. When you're playing and you can be other people, and you can be a selfish asshole, and you can be a little bit greedy, and you can be the person who's not a good listener, and you can be the person who's always making it about them, but you are playing that rather than actually enacting that, it actually, I think, releases this kind of, I don't know, it releases this like electricity to you that does become more available outside the classroom too. You take yourself a little bit less seriously, and you hold other people a little less to the task when you take yourself a little less seriously too. You're not having like a born again moment of just forgiving everybody their trespasses, but you can laugh a little bit more at just the sheer stupidity of everything. I don't know.
I love it. So do you have another exercise we can do that kind of works on this or plays with this idea?
Yeah, this is one that amuses me. I call this not exactly what I'm saying. So we can play 2 rounds of this so we both get to practice it. So the way it works is I'll be person one, you be person two. As person one, I am going to assert an opinion. So I would be like, I think Star Trek was really kind of ahead of its time. And then what you're going to do is you're just totally in agreement with me. You agree 100% with my opinion, and you just kind of rephrase it back to me. So I would be like, I think Star Trek is really ahead of its time.
Absolutely visionary work that he did, Gene
Yes.
Roddenberry.
Yeah. I mean, it's not exactly what I'm saying. It's not, it's not all Gene Roddenberry. You know what I mean? I think I think what I'm saying is that Star Trek kind of captured it captured an ethos of the 60s, but within that ethos was like the seeds of like a little vision for like the future. That's what I'm saying. So what you would do is you would then agree with that.
Okay.
And then restate that in your words. So no matter what I do, you completely agree with me, but you don't just say yes, you agree and rephrase exactly what I just said to you.
Okay, rephrase exactly what you said. Okay.
But so you did it perfectly.
Okay.
So then, so you would give that thing. So I would say, like, that's not exactly what I'm saying. It's not just Gene Roddenberry. It's the show itself is this kind of perfect alchemy, of elements that capture the ethos of the time.
Right, like society is being reflected in this show, and what's happening among people is now on the screen through this science fiction show.
Right. Yes, exactly. I mean, that's not precisely what I'm trying to say. I mean, it's not just a reflection, I guess what I'm saying. It's not just holding up like a mirror to things. Like, it's that too, but it's like the show itself becomes, I don't know, it's like something that's in the air, and the show is fertilized by that thing. It becomes a womb. It's growing the future. Does that make sense? The show is growing a vision for the future.
Right, like the show is it's the origin for something that's blossoming, that's coming into reality, that was just an idea that now blossoms into reality, that is going to happen not now but tomorrow.
Right. Yes. I mean, that's not 100% what I mean. I wouldn't say that the show is like the origin necessarily. It's more like the gateway, the doorway through which the future emerges.
I see. So yeah, I see what you're saying. that what's going to happen, not now, but in time to come.
I'm just going to cut you off right there really quick and say, I don't think you're getting my point. And see, it's not the idea. That's like basically the game.
That's a very fun game.
Yeah, I like this one a lot.
You're just not getting my point.
I teach a whole class around this game called How to Be a Jerk. You want to do one? So you state the opinion, and I'll be the person who agrees. And then it's just no matter how hard I agree with you, you always find something wrong with what I'm saying, even though I'm only saying exactly what you've already said. So you can pick any opinion that you like.
Okay. The Beatles really changed the world. And I mean, they're a band and it was music, but there was something about the way they just revolutionized the way rock music was heard.
Right. Yeah, they were like so much more than a band. I mean, they were a great band, but they were like, yeah, they were so much more than a band. They were like, I don't know, like the voice of the times.
Well, okay, that's not exactly what I'm getting at. I'm saying that here's four gentlemen from Liverpool that come together. They're just guys, they're just musicians.
Right, right.
Write music that reaches gazillions of people.
Right.
And touches their hearts and minds in a way that somehow this had never happened before.
Right. Yes. I mean, just four guys, right? But they're like greater than the sum of their parts. And that greater thing is like it's connecting with everybody, right?
Well, that's not exactly what I'm saying is that people would listen to what these guys came up with, their songs, sing those songs in their lives, tell each other, and they would actually be transformed by what they were singing and hearing, and these songs were on themes that people really weren't doing music about.
Right.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right. So I mean, they were, yes, exactly. They were singing about like particular things in their lives, but then it was connecting like universally. Right. Yeah.
I just don't think you.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's the game. Okay.
So that is really fun. Oh my God, what a great exercise.
I enjoy that one.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's so fun to do. And it's just to try and here you're actually listening so well.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about it is it totally does mimic listening with an agenda, right? Because I'm listening to you when I'm person one, I'm listening to you, but even though we're saying exactly the same thing, I prefer the way I say it. There's a subtext or like a meta text, which is even though we're both right, I'm more right. Even though you're saying exactly what I'm saying, I'm more correct than you. And so I'm constantly listening to find a way to like reassert that. In real life, when I'm doing that, it's not a great behavior. But as an improviser having to do it, what you find is it sharpens your listening so intensely. I listen effortlessly because I'm trying to cut you off. That's the thing. So it's that weird thing where it's when you're doing it and you're not conscious of the game aspect of it, it actually is bad listening. But when you're conscious of the game aspect of it, bad listening makes you a good listener because I'm listening for the opportunity to say more of what I want to say. Yeah. And furthermore, it's to say what I want to say because I'm asserting the dynamic that I think is the correct dynamic here, which is that I am saying this a little bit better than you.
That's what's so human about it, though, is that I don't want to say outright, I know this better than you.
Yes.
But I'm going to show you that I actually do.
Yes. Yeah. I want to be right and I don't want to look like an asshole about it. You know what I mean? Like that's the conflict. That's what makes that's the friction that's generating the behavior out of this character. And what's also like doubly funny is for the person on the receiving end, you just watch them become exasperated. You watch them become exasperated and sort of like, those like awful experiments they did like in the early 60s with like monkeys in electrified cages. They'd like randomly electrify a part of the cage so the monkey could never figure out what the stimulus was that would lead to a shock. So you just developed these like neurotic monkeys that were afraid to do anything. Awful, awful experiment. But you basically watched this person degenerate into that over the course of the scene. You know what I mean? Like they have no idea what to say, which again, in real life is awful, but in an improv context, it's very funny.
Well, this brings to mind, two thoughts about a scene I saw. It was a Kornfeld and Andrews show I saw, I think it was last summer. It was a while ago. And so I want to say to people listening, so the tragedy and the beauty of improv is that it only happens once and you have to be there. in order to experience it or ever even talk about it. But I'm now going to try to recreate a moment that no one was there except the audience and you guys. But you guys were on the space station.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember this show. And so Rick was doing a lot of stuff with machine, with keyboards and stuff. And you were manning you weren't looking at each other most of the time through the whole scene.
Mm-hmm.
But as it evolved, the scene evolved, you were both in love with the same person down on Earth who
Mm-hmm.
worked like Houston Control. And as you listened to each other, you were one-upping each other about her skills and her voice. And I could tell that of course, it's being improvised. When it's good improv like that, it looks like it's scripted, but it clearly is not. I know it isn't. But it was that exercise. It was more or less what we just did, where you would sort of correct him about, well, it's that timbre of her voice, and he would say something about, well, it's her technical knowledge, but it's also the timbre of her voice. But I saw that it became more and more and more aware, like you're both in love with this woman. And that was the whole dynamic between the two of you, was about being in love with the same woman, not about the space station. And I'm just reminded of that. You were applying that in the show, but it's really what great improv is about the human dynamic between people, no matter what it is they're doing or where they happen to be. It was also hilarious and heartfelt, like, whoa, what a problem to have. But I think that's so helpful to people to watch. I think about that show often. I'm not kidding. I think about the things you guys said and how amazed I was at how you were creating this third character who we would never know through this kind of listening. But you both wanted to get your words in. It was that exercise in some way. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I mean, in that case, there's like that self-esteem thing of I sense myself. I don't remember that show, but that dynamic is I'm around a competitor. And for my own self-esteem, I need to kind of score little points off my competitor. I need to make sure that I'm always like a point ahead just so that I don't crumble into insecurity. But it's also like in real life, oftentimes when you're in a conversation with a person who needs to be right, they don't realize they need to be right. They're just right. You know what I mean? They don't see the need behind it. They see the certainty that their point of view is correct. And they're compelled to assert that thing because I have a true thing and you don't have a true thing. And they fail to see the invisible side, which is, well, you need to assert that you're correct right now. In improv, we just pull it back a little bit wider to show the need. And that's the joke. The joke is not whether or not this person is correct. The joke is this compulsive need that actually is in the driver's seat for them.
Yes.
And that is where I think it becomes something that is sort of therapeutically useful because it reveals a little bit of the mechanics of what's going on interpersonally, but also it does it in a way where you're not shitting on it. You're not holding it up as an example of something that needs to be exercised from your personality or something that needs to be in any way navigated. You're making fun of it. And you're making fun of it with clear, precise observation. And so ideally, it's somebody sees it and they recognize some part of themselves in it. And you can laugh because you recognize you're not being attacked, you're being observed. And in a crowd of people who are all laughing for the same reason. So there's something very powerful about that sense of being in a communal space where we're sort of able to laugh at our monsters a little bit. It defangs them somewhat, especially when you realize that, like, well, I'm the source of this monster, same as you are. I'm not like looking at a monster that's outside that we need to fight off. I am the monster.
Yeah.
I'm no better or no worse than you are. And I'm not trying to get rid of it. I'm just, we can all look at it in the light of day together and have a hearty laugh because we can poke fun at it because it's not as awful as we think it is when we are stuck in that kind of Spolian approval, disapproval thing where it's, I have to behave this, but I have to be right. Or I have to be good, or I have to be a great listener. Once that have to is gone and you can kind of relax that a little bit and you can kind of roll with the people that you're playing with, the very act of play itself is the therapeutic thing. It's not about solving those issues in your personality. It's being able to give yourself over to play is the successful therapeutic act there. I don't know if that makes sense.
That is exactly it. That is everything what you just said. It's what we're giving ourselves over to and how that process, if we allow it, can begin to help us grow or just let go of the things that are holding us back. What improv, I think, strips all that. It can, if you allow it, it can be a way to be all those things that you are and also in this moment like a complete idiot and make fun of it all.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You have to be a better observer in order to notice it. I think a lot of people, when they think improv, they think like, oh, crazy ideas. I have to be crazy. Improv means I wear rainbow suspenders and I have a rubber fish and I'm constantly doing bits and I'm always saying unexpected things. That's not really it at all. That's like bad improv. As people mature as improvisers, they start to notice more and more opportunities with less and less premise. I need less and less crazy things to happen to notice more and more opportunity to actually play this moment. And those opportunities grow out of having a better perception of what are the basic dynamics between these characters here. It's wildly funny because it's like, yeah, that's how we operate. Shying away from that and pretending like that's not how we operate, or like somehow that's some feature of ourselves that we need to like sand away to accomplish some sort of ideal platonic perfection. I think that that's a misuse of energy. Just starting from the baseline of that's how we operate. That's the kind of like big thing about comedy, I think, ultimately, is it's like this is how we operate. This is it. Take a look. It's there's nothing like shocking or new about it. It's just being able to look at it and laugh and be like, let's start from where we are instead of where we should be.
Well, you accomplished so much in this conversation, Lewis, thinking about the need behind someone, say, dominating a conversation or having a strong opinion and making sure that you hear it and making sure that you know about our moral superiority in some way. Like the need behind that is it's basically a human thing that we can play with,
Yeah.
therefore understand. And if we choose, maybe we can let go of some of that and just the life becomes more fun, more interesting. People become more fascinating. And when we can still go home in our introverted way. And
I would not expect transformation to occur from this work. In fact, if I had students who were like talking about how they did an exercise in class and they went home and their relationships were transformed, I would be highly suspicious and a little cautious. It's not that. It's because behind that thing of like transformation is still this desire to overcome the parts of myself I think I should not have anymore. It's just overcoming it with a smile on your face and positivity. I've been transformed rather than I've done the hard work. I think it's a different quality than that. It's just something fundamental becomes a little bit more tangible about yourself. It's Spolin's like X factor or whatever the hell it is, becomes more of a presence that you recognize. There's an intelligence there. I don't lose the parts of myself that suck. They're still there, but underlying them is this intelligence that I can trust, that I seemingly have no control of. It does what it does. When I get out of its way, it helps me to succeed far more often than not. It makes me do brilliant things in scenes as long as I'm not asserting that I'm the one doing it. You know what I mean? Because I'm not. I should also say too, that desire to like, have the last word and to always be right. It goes the other way too. There's people who it's the desire to always not have an opinion. It's the desire to always be deferential. It's the same kind of compulsive thing. And you can make exercises easily out of that too. I do a game that when I don't have time to do it, but two people are on a date and they're both low status. And we talk about how status is a dynamic thing. Status is something you do. It's a movement in relationship to the other person. So let's say you and I are on a date and you always feel more comfortable being slightly below me, but I always feel more comfortable being slightly below you. And so we're both compulsively lowering our own status in relationship to the other person because we need to be number two. It's the exact same thing. So I don't want it to come across like it has to be, you have to win all the time. It's also, I have to lose all the time. It's exactly the same kind of dynamic, just in reverse.
Okay. Can we just do like a 1-minute version of that?
Yeah.
Just for fun.
So the example that I oftentimes give, so you and I are on a date, I'm driving, we're supposed to be at a restaurant, but I'm looking for a parking spot. So we feel more comfortable being low status in relationship to the other person.
Yeah.
And there's two things that you can think of for that. So, well, actually three things. The big thing is you never want to be this low status. I'm making a gesture with my hands where it's like the person who's low status is way low status. You want to be just below the other person. So you want to kind of stay neck and neck. And it's a shifting dynamic thing. So I can lower my status in relationship to you, either by lowering my own status or by raising your status. So every time I raise your status, I get to be a little below you, or every time I sink myself down. So you can look at both of those things. But the key thing for this exercise is it's not huge leaps of status. It's little tiny neck and neck, neck and neck.
Got it.
All right, we'll start. So I'm driving the car. I'm so sorry. We should have left earlier. It's my fault.
Oh, I kept you waiting too. So
Well, it was worth the wait. You look, if I may be so bold. You look very, very beautiful.
Thank you. Um, I, I, I wanted, I'm sure this outfit is not the greatest,
Sorry,
but
I shouldn't have said anything. I'm making you feel self-conscious. I'm an idiot.
I've seen, I've seen some of the women that you've dated, and you've dated some really, really spectacular women who also dress well.
That is so kind of you. Can I be really honest? It's my money. It's not even my money. It's my family's money. It's just the money. I've never dated anyone who's I think been in it just like for me.
That's really, I don't think I've ever dated somebody that dated me, except that I cook well.
I have a hard time believing that.
Well, you know, if you looked a little closer, you'd see that I had acne in high school, and my pores are a little large, and I think about that all the time.
There's a spot right there, but I'm gonna let this other guy take it.
Like, you're very good at, you know what? You're very you're an observant driver, and that's a time saver.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And if I may say so, I find that your pores are very normally sized, etc. That's the basic idea. That's it.
When I threw the pores, I thought I was lowering my status a little too much. But anyway, that was very fun. Thank
It's
you.
the adjustment between them that makes that game fun to do. It's not about being low status. It's about the constant movement around the other person. And so you
Yeah.
really got to kind of keep your focus on where the other person is at to make sure that you're keeping the adjustment just right.
What a fun conversation this was, and 3 wonderful exercises. This was so wonderful, Louis. Thank you so much for being part of this. And I wonder if you want to tell everyone listening how they can find you or what you're doing that you would like people to know about.
They cannot. I have no social media presence. My brag was a real brag. It was me actually bragging. I am not on social media. But if you're in the New York City area, I play every Sunday night with Rick Andrews and Kornfeld and Andrews. It's at 7:30s. And you can look at magnatheater.com to make sure that the show's on that week. For any podcasting fans, I write for a show called The Truth that is coming back after a 2-year hiatus. So if you like anthologized quasi science fiction, that is coming up and it's going to be really great. So look for that, thetruthpodcast.com. That's pretty much it for me. Stay up late at night, watch me in commercials. I'm up late.
I do see your commercials, but so I can't. So we'll put a link in the show notes for The Truth, and also there's the podcast, the shorts, the little.
Oh yeah, how could I forget? I have a podcast too, Kornfeld and Andrews, the radio plays. Rick and I do like little 10-minute dumb plays every week. That's a yes. Of course, do that one too. Sorry, Rick, if you're listening, I'm sorry, bud.
I'm telling you guys, if you listen to that, don't be drinking water in front of people. It will make you spit laugh. It's
very
so
kind of you. Very kind of you.
Tag at the end always just knocks me out. This was such a delight. Thank you so much, Louis. I know you don't believe in transformation, but I do.
I believe in transformation. I'm suspicious of rapid transformation. I believe
100%.
Transformation is possible.
I take the transformation in like micro moments, but I find just even talking about this is so uplifting, and I'm so grateful. And everybody, take classes with Louis.
Yay.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you for having me, Jude.
That's it for this episode of Improv in Real Life. For more info about our guest and other resources, you can visit our show notes. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please follow or subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're feeling extra generous, write us a review or share with a friend. You can also find us on Instagram at lifestage_inc. And if you want to dive deeper into these concepts, please connect with me on Substack at Jude Treder-Wolff. To be continued, to be continued, to be continued. We need each other now more than ever. We need creativity more than ever. I hope these games and ideas inspire you in some way. And if they do, keep it going. I will too. See you next time.